After decades as a CBS field reporter, Dan Rather took over the CBS Evening News anchor desk in 1981 from retiring Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America. Rather held that post for 24 years. During his storied career, spanning more than 60 years, Rather reported on nearly every headline event. Now, at 86, he offers news analysis and commentary on social media. I talked with the legendary newsman about his new book. 6 decades. That's a long time, Doctor.
That's a long time. Well, I've been very lucky and mightily blessed.
Spoken like a true Texan. He's been married to Jean, his wife, for 61 years, and he's the father of 2 successful grown children. I put down here, you're a chronicler of the times. And the times keep changing, you know, but you're keeping up with it. That's the interesting thing. You have frequently been defined as the voice of the liberal media. Is that the fact,
No.
Mr. Rather?
No.
How'd they tag you with that?
Well, I'm not sure, Scott. I can say, with a smile, no. I understand. I understand the question, and it's a fair question because there are any number of people who want to say, you know, Dan Rather, I know you. You're this liberal, leftist, Bolshevik, bomb-throwing pinko or whatever. I think part of it comes from the fact that I have been a reporter all my life. Right. And reporters, if you serve any kind of apprenticeship, you do see the underside of society, the Dickensian side of society. You've seen the poor, you've seen the homeless, you've seen the hungry. It's a side of life that many people don't see. When you do reporting on that kind of thing, there are many people who say, well, he leans left because he has sympathy for these people. I do, both compassion and empathy for them. I've seen my role through life as trying to be an honest broker of information.
After his divorce from CBS News in 2005, the octogenarian found a new audience in the digital space by providing analysis on current events via social media. You're all over Facebook. You're sort of a patriarch to the baby boomers, the millennials, and here you sit.
Well, it's true. One, this is proof positive that miracles still happen. And the second is, I have no idea why this has happened, but I am very grateful for it. If there's any reason for whatever success I've had on social media, I think it's because that this is a tumultuous time, and there are many young people who are afraid. What I have to offer, about the only thing I have to offer is, yes, I've lived a fairly long time. I have some experience, and I do try to put things in historical context and perspective when I can, and to be a steady, reliable voice. That's what I'm trying to do.
How do you counter the charge of being a host of fake news, Mr. Rather?
I don't try to defend it. I simply say, check my record. There's so many other things in life. You are what your record is. Now, my record is not unbroken. As I say, I've made mistakes and have wounds, some of them self-inflicted. But I have always been dedicated to trying to do quality news of integrity. The accusation of fake news, not necessarily with me directly, but in general, is often a tool for politicians who seek to accuse those of us in journalism of fake news for their own partisan, political, and/or ideological advantage.
In our deeply polarized times, Rather recently penned What Unites Us. The book is a series of reflective essays on the values that have shaped our national character. Rather's views on education to the environment, from politics to the press, challenges readers on the left, right, and center of the political spectrum. But perhaps, too, as I found, there's some common ground. You hooked me from chapter 1. What motivated you to write it?
There's so many people talking about what divides us in the country. And, you know, within me, deep somewhere in my id, is such a strong belief that what unites us, the things that unite us, are much more plentiful and much more important than the things that divide us. It's not that we don't have problems. We have problems, and we have differences of opinion. But there are certain core values of the country, which have been our core values ever since the founding of the country.
This was a strong statement on your part. Humility. If we lose that, we risk losing everything.
Absolutely. because humility is at the very core of patriotism. It's one of the things that separates patriotism from nationalism. Having said there's some overlap, but the spirit of patriotism is, I love my country, and to the point that I'm literally prepared to die for my country. But I recognize that my country needs to improve, that we can all improve. So humility is the core of patriotism, where nationalism tends to be a breastbeating, we're the greatest there's ever been, the greatest now. Right, and there are dangers in nationalism, and I won't give you my full blast on this, but I think it's so important right now.
Seems to me to be rooted in pride in many ways, the wrong kind of pride. It's another one of your topics. Service could almost be an antidote to pride.
There's a great and possibly decisive battle going on in the country for the soul of the country. And I'm not talking about by some political ideology. What I'm talking about, our soul has always been closely identified with service. Service to others, service to the community, service to country. This is what has made us the United States of America. That I personally believe in mandatory national service of some kind. I think it ought to include the military, but not be limited to that. Teach school in a poor neighborhood or go overseas with the Peace Corps or something like that. But this idea of service, as I say, it's gone a little out of fashion, and I think we should be worried about that.
That's an interesting prospect. Here's a charged word. We should neither forget nor be paralyzed by our prior national sins. You don't hear that word anymore. Why did you choose to use that?
Well, first of all, you're right. It's gone a little out of fashion to talk about it. Because it's a strong word and it's applicable. That we had the sin of slavery.
Right.
And it took us a long time to overcome that. And we're still in the process of doing penance, if you will, for the time in slavery. That, yes, we have nationally, as a country, as a society, committed sins. But at least you and I, as Christians, believe in redemption.
That's right. And repentance was a word I wrote down. That's because I know many people who have repented of those historic sins of this nation. Do you think your book's going to sell to the mid-America between the two coasts?
Well, I'm happy to say that I already have enough evidence that it has. It's funny with a book that you write it and you put it out there, it's in the arena, you have no idea what it's going to do. I'd love to hear from anybody who reads it.
I don't want to put you on the spot. Is there a spiritual dimension to you?
Well, I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
And I think so.
Yeah.
Look, I was raised in a family that was a praying family. We went to the little, and it was little, West 14th Avenue Baptist Church in the Houston Heights. It's still there under another name. That gave me not only some spiritual foundation, but also gave me, yes, a religious foundation. Now, don't misunderstand me. That, again, I've made my mistakes over the years and have too often strayed. But you asked me if I had a spiritual dimension, and I said, well, I certainly hope so, and yes, I think I still do.
I read this last night. It's a proverb from the book of Ecclesiastes. It describes you. How wonderful to be wise, to analyze and interpret things.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm unworthy of that, but as the saying goes, from your mouth to God's ear, that I could become that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very much. I really appreciate it.